First off, I'm just going to do a check because we have people on the phone. So I just want to make sure, take a minute to make sure that all of that's working properly. Can everyone hear me on remotely? If you can, maybe I have someone who's monitoring questions. If there's things that you need throughout the presentation, please type your question in, and somebody's monitoring those. If you have any concerns or you just want to ask a question, we'll see if we can get those answered. We still have a few people who are rolling in, so I'm just going to wait one more minute before we actually start. Are we getting any feedback, Trevor, from?
Not quite.
No? Okay. Well, my assumption is that everyone can hear me fine, and if not, we'll. Can everyone see the presentation online? That would be another question.
Okay, see this.
Okay.
Probably, I don't know what people are.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just gonna. You cannot hear me? There is so I'm talking. I have a sound check. The microphone is on and seems to be working. But because this would be, you want to know what? Because I came in as a presenter, or not as a presenter, remember when I logged in? And that means that nobody, do you need to give me?
I made you presenter.
Did you give me ability to talk?
Yes, you're not.
Okay. So the result is that nobody online can still not hear me? Should I?
Let's start a broadcast.
Oh,
That one.
wasn't working.
Right here?
No.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
It just takes a village for everything. Raising children, having presentations. Okay, are we good now?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, thanks everyone. Man. All right, well, it's rainy, cold. Thanks for coming, showing up. It was great. Tableau. We've had Tableau on campus now, or within the university for about what, five plus years now, kind of. I don't know how many people have been using it for 5 years. If you're 5 weeks using it, 5 years, it doesn't matter. The tool is robust. It's got so much stuff. We've been using it for 5 years. I feel like I know about 5% of the tool. So having these discussions is really about just having you, not me, you guys, just to show what you guys are doing. It doesn't need to be anything profound, because sometimes the simplest answer or the simplest graph is giving people answers that they need out there that is in a way that is simple and easy and very useful. So I always encourage people who are out there using Tableau that are like, oh, I just built a simple line graph. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's about just knowing what other people are doing and knowing that what you're doing is useful and just building a community. So So my name is Tara Sadler. You probably see my name once in a while coming through your emails, if not through the Tableau user group. Please reach out at any time if you have any questions. There is a listserv as well out there that you can become, and I'll send some of that information out again after this meeting, kind of recapping what this meeting was about to the people and whatnot. So, but you know, always communicate with me if you just want to say hi. That's cool too. So, today we have a couple speakers, and one is Sarah Bielen, and she's going to talk to us today about some visualizations that she built for the alumni, and that surrounds around a senior Illini event series and how they learn to use that data. And then we have Michael Painter from Education, and he's going to talk about sharing your data extracts securely, and then a look at the Tableau web editor. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without talking about licensing for Tableau and all of the wonderful things that go around Tableau server and the upgrades and whatnot. And we have Mike Wunderlich going to speak about some things like that. So question Q&A. I know a lot of times you guys have some questions about that. So he's here today to answer some of those. Okay, for all you lucky dogs out there that get to go to Tableau conference, is there anyone here that is who gets to go? I know Sarah Archana. And the reason why I do this is because it's an amazing experience to go to this conference. And if you are one of the people who actually get an opportunity to go, wow, you know, it's really great. It's a fun experience. It's hyped up. You have a lot of fun, but you learn a lot of stuff, and it's exhausting. So if you knew other people that were going, sometimes it's nice to maybe hook up and whatnot. But the great part about Tableau is that they know not everybody can go. So they do a fantastic job. First of all, they hold about 1,000, there's about 18, I don't know the numbers. I know when I went a couple years ago, it was 15,000 people who are at this conference. So I'm sure the numbers have gone up. But they have over 1,000 sessions that they hold, and for you to choose from. So it's actually kind of daunting to try to figure out what you actually want to go through, and there's no way that you're going to be able to go through to all of them. So what they do is not only do they stream some really fantastic things as it's happening, the keynote speakers, the Iron Viz, you know, there's some other things that they actually live stream, so you can actually be part of what's happening at that moment, which is really nice. But after the conference is completed, they record over 400 sessions, and then they put it out there for you and anybody who is part of the Tableau community to sign up and go and watch. And they're really great resources. So I'll send a link out to that after the conference so that you guys have those links and stuff like that. But it really is something that it's always hard to take time out of your day to watch an hour session. But they have search engines to help you find, you know, maybe something that you might want to stumble across that you might be interested in. So that's just a note for you all to know what's up and coming. And for all you people out there, yes.
Maybe this group is interested in hosting an online event. Like as a group, we can watch the online conference after the conference is.
Sure. I mean, if you
usually that works like group watching.
Yeah. Sometimes I think some people are really into that. Some people, because of time and stuff like that. But that's a really excellent suggestion. If people are interested in that, please, you can. There's a listserv, so you can always put something out there. You can create your own watch party and just say, hey, if anybody wants to join me, I'm going to be on this room at this time, and then people can come to you. So that's kind of a really good example about what that listserv would be. And I think right now there's over 100 people that are, I think we're up to 105 people on that listserv, and I'll send that out as well. You can use that, and it will go out to all those people. And so if you want to have a watch party, I think that that's a fantastic idea. So, and you can say, you know, Tableau user group or just Tableau, you know, anyone who wants to come. So get a room, and so excellent suggestion. With that said, I'm going to exit, and Sarah's going to come up and talk about her amazing visualizations.
Hello, I'm Sarah Beyond. I'm with the University of Illinois Alumni Alliance and the Illinois Alumni Association. As you can imagine, we have lots of different sets of data, alumni data, we have location data, all these things. One of those places that we really wanted to focus on was we had a lot of data from our senior Illini events. After every event, we send out a survey. We were getting back information and able to share some about the specific events, but we wanted to be able to do things like compare events. And we wanted to be able for people to easily toggle between events and see what our participants thought of it. So that really drove us to put this together. When it came to thinking about how do you get people to use it, because it's one thing to build a beautiful visualization, and then there's that sad moment where you realize no one's looking at it. And so part of it for us, and for me with Tableau, in any kind of data visualization work that I'm doing, is to involve the end user early. Make sure that we're asking them really good questions and giving them time for feedback, telling them it's okay if what I've said is not really where you're heading. We need to reroute then and do that. And also for me, sometimes I have those moments when I'm like, this is really going to be the best visualization ever. And then they look at it and they go, but I just wanted a bar graph. And if they just wanted a bar graph, unless I have a really good reason, if I can make a case for them to use something else, sometimes I have to step off my, this is what I want, plant my flag here and say, okay, this is where we need to be for them and what they want to know. And so that's really been, it's a key thing for me, and it's something that I have to remind myself of periodically, because there are certain things that I'm like, this will be really amazing, and they're kind of like, eh. So another piece is communication afterwards. So this data set, we do not automatically update. It does not auto refresh because of how we have to pull some of the data through. So just sending them a little email and saying, hey, I wanted you to know we've updated it with this information. I include the link, just again to prompt, make it easier. And they've really begun to use it to look at future events, make some changes to events they had coming up from feedback they got from some of our participants. So that's been very helpful. And also for us using it, this is not an evaluation where, your life is looming over this. This is a tool for us to use. It's a flashlight, not a hammer. And so we very carefully want to work with it and make sure we use it that way. Because this is the Tableau user group, I'm going to quickly walk through a little bit about our data source. Two parts. We have it coming from a server, and then our actual data from the survey is coming from an Excel file. It runs through Qualtrics, but we currently do not use the Tableau integration. We've looked at that. There's a price that goes with that. Obviously, they'll give it to you for free. And so we're evaluating whether or not that would be something we would want to do. So in the meantime, we use Excel files and just kind of give you an idea about how those look. We have a file that has all the questions and all the response options. And then a file that has all of the response information we've received from our participants. And there are very specific reasons why it is set up that way, partially because of some of how we want to visualize the data. We want both of those different Excel tables. And I'm happy to spend time walking through this with people because it took me a while to understand why we would want to do it that way, and that's quite important. I definitely recommend, if you are interested, going to, going to see what Steve Wexler has on his data revelations page. He has a huge section on visualizing survey data. And if you look through his Tableau conference presentations, he actually walks you from beginning to end on structuring your data, on putting all of that together, and it's just a very handy reference for for all of that. I also use it when I'm looking, you can see general survey information, but also particular kinds of questions and how you may want to visualize that for people. Just a very handy reference for me to use as we look at that data. Now we can get into, oops.
It's the other one, sorry.
There we go. There we go. Now we'll get into the evaluation itself. Does anyone here work with survey data? The first page we really put together with a mind to key information that the people who own our senior Illini program and set it up would need. So obviously at the top we linked it out. We have people who registered. We have the number of attendees. We have the number of evaluations we got and our response rate. We really worked with them on what were the key questions for each event. Those are obviously here on the front page as well. One of the pieces that I found is really helpful as we visualize that data, and the reason why we have that question Excel sheet and then the responses from our, is that we want to be able to visualize the survey responses that were not used. So you'll see here, we have survey responses that were not used, and we want people to know this was all the choices that were available. These were the ones that were chosen. And so by using the empty rows option, go into the edit here, you can show options that were not used and allow for that. Does anybody else use empty rows? Yeah, yeah, under analysis, let's see here. I don't think it'll show it on here. If you go under analysis, there's another layer there and you can tell it to show the empty rows and it will bring that across, which is very helpful. Another piece that I found particularly useful is when we have bar charts, Likert questions, I will set up a separate, very simple sheet with all the options that exist so that we can see when we click on them anytime, they can see, oh, we didn't have any of this response type. So it's a very handy tool that way. Next, we ask some questions about interest and awareness. Again, in these cases, we have the different response options at the top, the question, and then I use, because this is specifically for alumni of the Urbana-Champaign campus, I use a custom color set that is our Urbana-Champaign colorways with our logos and that information. And if you've never done it, those are actually a lot easier to input than you think. It's very easy, and then you always have access to them. It's very, very helpful. We ask people, why did you attend? And this is one of those places where we get some interesting responses because we offer other, right? So one of the things we have to do when we pull that data through is when you see the answer wording, it just comes through as whatever that person told you. Well, we want to be able to group that and show it in the graph. So especially in the case of this first, the far left one, other is obviously a very important option. Lots of people wanted to tell us why they came. But we also want to display at the bottom what their specific response was. So we try to make sure that we have both of those available. We also have places where people can provide us with comments, and we certainly appreciate those and work through that, but we want to make sure that they can see those. And Then they wanted to be able to see things like registration and attendance and compare that with response rates and other information. So one of the tools we had to put together was, I said, well, do you want to be able to see it in a calendar view, 12-month, January to December, or do you want to see it in your fiscal year? And of course, the answer was yes, both. And so one of the nice, very easy features in here is to take the date, right-click, duplicate it, and then you have two versions of the very same date file, but you can have one running calendar and one running on the fiscal year. And so that allowed us to provide them with the tools to be able to filter on either of those and then be able to narrow down to specific events if there was a specific group of events that they wanted to see. But that has been a pretty key piece for registration and attendance as we show response rates. And then one question that they really was most important to them to be able to compare was putting that overall event compares data to be able to compare that. So we've offered that in all of those cases with the option to really look at and begin to dig into that. For all of our pieces, we've really been working to make sure we have an about the data section. This one's pretty short, but just to try to make sure that people can understand, what's in here, maybe where it comes from, but not, it's not necessarily for the data person side, this is for the end user side. So we want to make sure that it's tight, easy to understand, and works for them, and also providing information about when it was last updated so that they know how current that particular set of information is. Anything, questions, comments, ideas? How to improve would be very helpful. Anything I can take back to them and say, would you like to try this? And they'll say, can I just have my bar graph back?
Have they considered reducing the number of options for the 1 to 10?
We haven't, yeah, the question was, have we considered reducing the number of options from 1 to 10? We haven't gotten that far yet. This was really one that it was already running and had been running for probably a year when I started with the organization. So it was visualizing what we had. At some point, yeah, can we go back and look at potentially what questions, how do we want to ask them, and kind of shaping some of that? We can certainly look at that. Absolutely. Anything else? Anybody got any ideas for me? What a great data group. Everyone's so quiet. Anything at all? There is one toy that I do not use in here because most of the time the data set's pretty small, but I have used it on larger ones and really like. Yes.
If you have a question online, it says, have you thought about adding numerical values to show a dot, then show the average answer?
For like the Likert questions, I'm assuming. So this would be showing a dot where with the answer. So let me go back. Yes, I've looked at that, and we can certainly consider that option. So I'm going to bring this back here. What they're talking about, I think, is something, and you will see this in the data revelation site, because that is one of my favorite charts that I can't get anybody to use. It's called a divergent bar chart, and it's beautiful, but it's not for a lot of people, and that's okay. But they'll take this, and then they'll put the circle with the average and have it line up on here as well. That's also another nice key indicator. We haven't used that in this particular situation because it doesn't suit our end user, but there are certainly cases where with data that I don't have the ability to share with you that we have used that kind of thing, and it can be very, very helpful. One tool that I learned about that really has been helpful as with large data sets where we want to be able to break it down by subgroups is using parameter values to break down by. This is one of our events. So if we wanted to look at it by attendees who were alumni or non-alumni, and attendees who were new or returning, or if we want to see the whole group, very easy to toggle between those. Yes, you have another online question?
No, my question.
All right.
How much have you worked with scaling the visualizations for different monitors / tablets / mobile?
We're just starting to do more of that. I've not done a lot with mobile, but we're starting to work work more with scale. That's kind of a newer one for us. A lot of what we have done is really currently set for desktop browser. More? Come on, bring me more.
Issues with your users like having conflicting filters. You're talking about the fact that you have both the calendar and the fiscal year things, and they don't appear to be exclusive filters the way that they're set up.
Right.
Where you could, accidentally have a group excluding a huge chunk of the things not realized.
Yes, and we haven't put this one was about using the filters and having data be excluded. When we worked through it with people, we have not had an issue. Definitely something for us is considering the language we use here. We may update some of that because really the calendar year and the fiscal year filter that exists run independently, but they impact the events filter. And so that's one thing we do work with people on, is understanding that. That's also one of those places where, again, throwing every tool and toy that I have at it becomes really important to take several of them off, because all of a sudden people are like, I can't find, none of my data is here. I can't find anything. And you realize that it's just, you have way too many options. It's like going to the grocery store and there's 24 kinds of ketchup. We need 3. So, continually dialing it back. Dialing your colorways back, dialing everything back as far as you can.
So I was kind of running into that where, people filtered on something when they realized it. And so something that I had done on some of the reports I created is, like, for example, where it says response rate at the top and then response rates are indicated, I would maybe do a line below that and I would say, like, filtered on, and then it would populate.
And use the dynamic information. That's a great idea. That's really great. We have to throw that in there. Anything else? Anybody? Yes.
What's the secret to getting all of the colors to match the same UI theme?
The secret to that is custom colorways, which I'm happy to talk about. It's very easy to do, and I can include the link for that. The one thing you have to remember is when you update to a new version of Tableau, make sure that you reset your My Tableau repository to wherever all of that is stored. Otherwise, you will open it up and you will hit panic mode when you use your color drop down and your colors aren't there. And I'm happy to share with anyone, I have colorways for all 3 of our universities, all set to our branding. I'm happy to share any of that. That was put together as well. Obviously, those are all something that we use very regularly, so it's very important to us to use the colorways for each of the universities. But we do that, and that prevents from having to go in and edit the color every time. You can just go in and pick it up, and you have exactly what the branding for the university is. And then I keep the links for the branding for each of the universities in my browser, because every once in a while something gets tweaked a little bit, and you want to make sure that you can go back and access that and any changes that may exist. All right. Anything else?
Do you use the web-based version of Tableau to develop it? I think we mainly do everything in the Tableau desktop.
I pretty well work in Tableau desktop. The web version, if there are little tweaks that I need to make on the fly or something, especially if I'm not at my desktop, but I have typically worked from the desktop version.
Has the web version been useful?
The web version has been useful for, again, like tweaking, that kind of thing. I know there are some things that you just can't necessarily do in the web version, and so that, but having, part of it's just me. I originally learned on the desktop version. I am most comfortable with the desktop version, and we're all most comfortable in certain places, so I'm gonna go find my, it's also just a little easier and faster because that's the one I know if I need to do something really fast, that's the easiest place.
So we always use the desktop version because of the issue of the sharing the university data, which might have some identifiers in it. So to my understanding, if we upload and if we work on the environment of online, I think we must share the online, our data with anybody. So which is not the case. Is that the correct understanding? I just want to
Let's do this.
Okay, just for the people online.
Yeah, for the people online, this is a question about using the web tool and data access, especially specific personal level data.
I say in housing, we've got the several groups and different groups on the Tableau server, and I'm able to publish up data sets with whatever information, and then we just put only the people who have access to that into that AD group, and they can go in and use the web version with those data sets that we can curate and publish out. We haven't got a ton of use of it, to be fair, but we do have several users who do go in and look at things that way. So that works for us because we've got a particular web users group of people who have permissions. In this case, I think it's the dining data that we have out there for them that they can go into. And your standard users have no rights to visit that project in Tableau.
Just to clarify, if you're using the Tableau server like that is hosted here at the university, then you can do what he's just described, and that's what he's described.
that's
If
my
you try to
understanding
use
as well.
Tableau public, you have
Yes,
to.
yes, okay.
Oh, okay,
So
sorry.
the difference is, using Tableau public versus using a Tableau server that's hosted by
That
like
is the
university.
But there are web tools on our service here at the university.
Right. Yeah, that was the thing that I would do.
I'm curious why you would choose to use Tableau Public when you have a hosted Tableau server.
Right. So I am not saying that we are using Tableau Public, but yeah, just wanted to, I just want to make a difference between the public and the server of the university.
I would say you're correct if it's public, and that's the key word with Tableau Public, is it's wide open to the world.
Right.
And they can download whatever you publish out there, and so by all means don't put university data out there. But our Tableau server is a university resource, so therefore you can't host university data on it. And just as an extra fact, we've actually got the Tableau server is HIPAA approved. So there are some conditions on how you use it, but mainly I'm trying to speak to the fact that the server is highly secure.
Does it have, because there's the license, we'll get into the licensing stuff, I think, and that may be where you have the sort of confusion happening. Because there's the licensing for the desktop version. Are there licensing fees for using the web version of the server?
Can I put a pin in that and talk about it during the
Because I
licensing
think
talk?
that's where we've got the possibly some of the confusion happening.
But I would say no additional licensing required.
Okay.
That'd be the little preview.
You're obviously
So for people online, if you didn't hear all the conversations that was happening in the room, which I apologize if you can't hear all the questions. It's hard to repeat as people are organically having a conversation. But really, that conversation really revolved around Tableau Public, using Tableau Public opposed to Tableau Server, and as far as the data, and then Mike, which he's going to talk more about in regards to server, and a couple additional questions and or answering some points about that. So that will happen later on in the discussion. So you didn't miss too much if you didn't hear what was going on in the room, outside of the fact that there were some some communication regarding the differences between using Tableau Public and Tableau Server. So.
Yes.
I do have one more question for you.
Okay.
It says, do you encounter questions about IRB/human subject perfection since you're using survey data?
We have not, but ours is really an internal, very small use. It's not research. We're not a part of any of the university research, so our use with IRBs and other things is very different, probably from some other folks in the room and their experiences. I know there are some folks who do have that, like Illini Success, and those folks have that with their work. Yeah, it's a different. Yeah, it's a different purpose. All right, thank you.
Hey guys, I am Michael Painter from the College of Education. Nominally a systems analyst. In reality, I do some data integration stuff, and I work with Tableau less for making beautiful visualizations, although I would love to get into that more. I've done some, we've made some dashboards. Honestly, I use it more for data access, bringing data together and sharing it with people, bringing data from different systems together, letting people see it and interact with it. So because of that, a lot of my work is, we're not making public visualizations to share out with the world. I'm trying to make a bar graph that our academic affairs office can click through and then download some data if they need to. And that means that we've got to have security levels on all of the data that we're sharing there. So for those of you who have not used Tableau Server, I didn't even think to mention that in here, but the conversation, obviously, that's worth mentioning. If you go to, I think it's web.admin.uillinois.edu/Tableau, or Google Tableau and AITS or something, I'm sure you'd find it, then you can request space on the campus Tableau server, or university system Tableau server, and then you secure that so only certain people can get to it. And that's where we put all of our stuff. So everything I publish is innately restricted to whoever I have shared our Tableau server stuff with. But we want to filter it even further than that. For example, we have a space on Tableau server where we share to our entire college. And then the workbooks I put up there, I want to say, if you're an academic advisor, you see this stuff. If you are a staff member, you're going to see this other stuff. If you're a faculty member, you're going to see. So we have to break down our permissions kind of within our visualizations rather than at the whole project level, at the whole visualization level. So a thing that we're headed toward, that we do a little of and that we're working on doing more of, is sharing our data sources. Rather than just sharing the visualizations that are the end results, our college also doesn't want to have to license, pay for Tableau desktop licenses for every person in the college, but we really want, if there's somebody in human resources who's a real data whiz and they want to interact with some of this data, then we'd like to open it up to them. And similarly, if we produce a data set that's maybe a compilation of EDW data at something local or whatever it is, or a unique combination of EDW data, then if another college comes and says they want to be able to use that same data structure, but with their own college's data, we want to be able to share that with them. So we're trying to set up this way of sharing our data sources. And so I'm just going to go through this pretty straightforward process, I think, and then I'll talk more about how we implement that, how it works. So to set up a data source, the first thing, obviously, you set up a data source just like normal. In this example, I've just got these two tables. They're just EDW tables. And the fact that I have two tables on here is sort of relevant for us because we extract almost everything we do as an extract. I really don't want Tableaus. I don't want my visualizations and the interaction with it, especially if we're going to open up to people in the web editor. A lot of times we can't handle live data. It's just too slow if I'm connecting to something or doing complicated joins. So we extract almost everything, especially for stuff like this. So we set up the data source, and having these in two different tables is relevant because the last step is doing a multiple tables extract. So I'll get back to why that could be relevant. So you set up your data source more or less like normal. Could be from spreadsheets, could be from a database. We always use databases. And then you join an authorizations table. So for us to do this row level security where an academic advisor is only going to see rows relevant to their own students, or departmental staff is only going to see their own department's data. So we add, in this case, I'm doing a department table. So I would have a table. This says department authorization, and it would basically be a table comprised of maybe a net ID and a department code, right? You just have two columns, net ID and department code. It could be anything, any kind of permission structure you want. But so for this example, it's department codes, and you just join it just like normal. Now the problem is if you extracted this with a regular single table extract, like Tableau used to only have that, multiple tables is a new option. This would balloon the data. If you've got 30 people who have access to each department, you don't want to duplicate all of your data 30 times. It's going to make your extract incredibly huge and slow. But that won't be a problem because of the multiple tables. So we just join it like normal. And again, this department authorization that I'm using could also be a spreadsheet. So if you want to, in this case, I'm managing permissions in a table on the server, but you could also manage the permissions in a spreadsheet. You could manage the permissions in anything you can connect Tableau to. You could click the little add button and join it to an Excel sheet that was hosted in Box or something if you wanted some user of yours to be able to manage some of the permissions. Then after you've added that to your data source, then you filter. So this is the key to being able to share the data source. If you filter this way as opposed to filtering in your workbook, then when I publish this data source and I say anybody at the college can connect to it, anybody can connect to it, but they'll only see what they can based on this filter. Nobody can get past this filter on the published data source. And in this case, I clicked add, I click add again, I pick the net ID column from my authorization table, and I put in this criteria. My criteria is the net ID equals the logged in user. You can have that formula be as complicated as you want. Usually in practice, I'll have member, is the person a member of this admin group? Are they a staff member? Does their net ID match the department? Maybe we'll have some other, does their net ID from another table that grants access at a different level match? So you can make this formula a little more complicated so that certain people have broader levels of access that are controlled by more than just this one table. But for this example, it's just the one table. So you set that one filter, and then you extract. So this is the thing that Tableau added just in the last, I want to say 6 months, maybe 10 months. They added this multiple tables extract, and it's what allows you to do this without making your extract enormous, because you're denormalizing it to, when you cross-join it with all of your authorized users, you'd be duplicating every row for every user. But with the multiple tables option, this is one of their main use cases that Tableau talked about when they released the feature. It will store each of the tables from your data source separately, and then it will join them when it's doing visualizations. That allows you to keep the data set, the Tableau extract, a reasonable size. In my experience, it's been very responsive. And all you do is you just go to extract, click multiple tables, and you click OK. The multiple tables option won't be available if any of your join conditions on these tables are anything other than straight equality. If you've got a greater than less than in there, it won't let you do multiple tables. Also, a thing that has tripped me up several times, and I get confused about it, and I have to Google it, is multiple tables isn't available if your join conditions have fields that are different types. So if you've got one data set where department code is a string and the other data set, your department code is an integer, and you've joined those with equality, and then you come here, multiple tables isn't available, you just have to go in and make a calculated field that says, this converts this one to a string. But that's not obvious. They don't make it obvious when that happens. Another trick, if you're doing multiple tables extracts, and you're using a database, I almost never actually pull in straight tables like I did with this, because with multiple tables, I've got this data filter on it, but obviously the data filter is actually being applied after the join in the visualization still. If you want, because of that, it has to extract, in the extract, it has all of the data from the tables, even if it's data that you're necessarily filtering out. So what I always do is a custom query. So instead of dragging in a table, I drag in a custom query and I select everything from that table that I want. Or I'll select everything from multiple tables into one. From the Tableau data source perspective, it ends up being one table. And then the only separate thing is my authorizations. So, and you can get really fancy with it, with the multiple tables thing, actually. I've tried in some cases where I'm extracting a lot of data. I've tried to take things that I think are going to be kind of repetitive, pull them out into a separate table and make some sort of a join, just so that it can store like our academic program name separately instead of repeating that in every single one. It can be helpful. I haven't seen it negatively impact performance. They say multiple table extracts impacts performance. It has not been an issue for the ones I've done, except in one case where I was cross-joining every job at the university with every day that job was active. I gave that a try and it did impact performance, but in general it works really smoothly. So I've been really happy with that. And so now to get to the reason I covered it kind of at the beginning, and it is that once you've done this and you publish your data source to Tableau server, you can share it. I could take these data sources and I could make them available to every user on the Tableau server. So that's going to be every authenticated user, anybody who has access to Tableau server, which is basically anybody, could get in there. And anybody who has access to edit mode, which would be, in our case, I open that up to lots and lots of our staff. So they could then go into Tableau server, click this data source, new workbook, and they can just start working with the data source, and the security is all handled. If it's somebody at the college who shouldn't have access to that data, they can connect to the data source and they see no data. And of course, that's kind of annoying, but but I won't be directing them to it. So it allows us to do that without having to buy licenses for everyone. It gets people into the data where they can interact with it completely, but also securely. So I was going to talk a little about the web editor. It seems like a lot more people have started to use it than had a year or two ago, just from the sound of people talking about it. I mean, people were getting into it. It is a little more limited. I would never recommend that any of us rely on using the web editor. I mean, you still can't in the web editor. They've been coming increasingly close to the desktop experience, but you don't have control over as fine of control over the colors. You don't have as fine of control over some of the styling. And so if you're trying to make a pretty visualization, this isn't really where you want to be. If you've got a user who doesn't have Tableau desktop, but you want to share some data with them, this is almost the same experience. You search for fields, you drag stuff and drop it, and it's really smooth. They just won't be able to do, like, for me, since we do a lot of report sharing, we end up with a lot of columns. I always have to go into my analysis, table format, advanced, add more than 6 columns, because it starts to, if you add more than 6 rows, it starts to smash them together at the front. You can't change that setting in here. So there are a number of formatting settings you can't mess with in the web editor, but when it comes to the basic experience of interacting with the data, it's almost the same. And now you didn't used to be able to edit parameters in the Tableau web editor. You can do that now, which was that was a big deal for me. Otherwise, every time I published a data source, I had to publish a workbook that had the parameter control shown. Otherwise, web editor users couldn't get to it. Now they can, and that's the sort of thing that Tableau is. They are building that up. I think that the web editor is getting better all the time. So, and again, that's why I'm doing this whole Tableau extracts thing. The same logic of multiple tables Tableau extracts with authorization coming in from a data source applies to the desktop. So that same data source that I published, if one of my users was using Tableau web editor and turned out they were getting really fancy and wanted Tableau desktop, and they get Tableau desktop, they could connect to that same data source, and it would be exactly the same experience. They would still be automatically filtered. If they try to download the Tableau published data source, they require a password before you can actually interact with it when you do that. So the data source would still be secure even if my end user, whether my end user is using the web editor or using Tableau desktop, if you've published it with that data source filter, it's still secure. So that's all I got. You guys have questions? Yep.
There's a question online that says, is it possible to get to get to data from two tables that are in different databases? Yeah, people do that a lot, and it's here. When you're creating a data set, you've got the add. So when you first go to make a new data source, obviously you pick the type, Oracle database, SQL database, Excel file, whatever type you pick. After you have, where did my mouse go? There it is. After you have connected to that one database or whatever the underlying source is, you can come in here and click add and connect to another database. You can connect to an Excel sheet. I was just testing it out earlier to make sure it was true that I could have a data source that's connecting to Oracle, and then I could also click that little add button and connect to an Excel sheet and have my permissions there. And you can. So you can connect to multiple not just multiple databases, you can connect to multiple. This add connections thing lets you connect to anything Tableau connects to. So I think, yeah.
At some point, I thought there was a restriction on connecting to the multiple databases and then using the multi-table extract option.
If there is,
maybe in the newer versions it's available.
I think it's available.
And one more question.
I could be wrong.
Do you use an application account or something and then generate the extract and then have individual users? Yeah. Go and access the extract and generate.
Yeah. So the two questions that were just asked are one, I could be wrong that multiple tables extract may not be available if you're using multiple connections. I think it is, but I am not as certain of that as I am of some of this other stuff. So that might be worth testing, that you connect to multiple before you go try and actually build up a bunch of stuff. That you could try and make a data source with multiple connections by clicking that add and then seeing if you can do a multiple tables extract still. And the other question is how we connect to our data source, whether we use an application account, and that is what we do. I have an application account, in this case, that connects to the data warehouse server, and it has access to, in all cases, at least our college's data, in some cases, all campus's data, and we can, we copy that into the extract, and then we're managing permissions to restrict it to the appropriate people at the college. It's a suitable experience. I have debated how smart it is to be doing it, because then I'm managing this extra layer of permissions when AITS is already managing the permissions, and I don't necessarily want to be on the hook for that, nor do I really want to waste effort having people request access to this and the EDW data, which in most cases these people are, because they also want to use EDI, so they've got to request access there, and then they've got to get access here. so because we are taking the application account, shadowing it, and then displaying it, I have talked to some people working on trying to find better ways to share permissions data, just to make it a little more consistent. But for now, it's just I have this extra layer. And actually, in my case, these authorizations tables that we use are AD groups. So we have a set of AD groups to manage permissions, and I have a script that copies the AD groups into a database. I don't know, every 3 hours or something. And then when Tableau does its extract in the morning or whenever, then it uses those tables, which are a representation of those AD groups. For us, for education, we have been trying really hard to centralize all of our permission stuff in AD. But I don't know, there are pros and cons.
So by using AD group, does it mean that you don't have to manage the permission changes? Then you have to say someone who from one organization to a different organization will change the permission, right? By utilizing AD group, is that the case that you don't have to manually manage that part of the change?
Right. So since we base it on AD groups, in some cases those AD groups are tied to banner or college directory data, and actually they'll get automatically added and removed when people update those sources, and that'll flow into the permissions. In other cases, somebody has to manually edit the AD group, but that's the only place I have to do anything. It'll automatically get pulled into our database and then automatically get filtered into the Tableau data source. And then in other cases, these row-level permissions like this could be based straight on banner data. I mean, for example, the student advisor, the academic advisor, that's part of the data source. So I could come in to, when I set this data source filter, if I'm making a data set that's for advisors, then I can come in here and I can say as my condition that the advisor net ID matches the username. And then I definitely never have to do anything to update the permissions because it's just tied to the data. All right, anything else? All right, thanks, guys.
Well, I've been getting a lot of, well, before we get to that, let's talk about the latest upgrade. So it was just a few weeks ago, we upgraded to 2019.2. Quick thing on the versions. The major releases are now based on the year that they're released. So 2019 shows that it's this year's. .2 is the service pack level. The next number is the maintenance pack. We're on 2019.2.3 with the server. I just had somebody ask me a question this week. Can I use 2019.2.5 on my desktop? Yeah, you can. As long as you're at the same major, the service pack level, you should have no issues. You go to a newer, if you went to 2019.3, you might pick up new features that the server won't support. So then when you publish to the server, which at least now they let you do, used to be you couldn't publish backwards, but now you can. But it's going to give you a warning that if you've used a feature that's not supported, and you may end up having a visualization that doesn't look right. So anyway, here are the three main improvements with the .2 service pack. Improved map features. I'm not a big mapping person. I think it's using vector mapping or something like that. So if you're into mapping and you understand that stuff, it's better. There's more options with parameters, and some of that might help with some of the things that Michael was just talking about. So where you can pass in parameters and control a visualization. That might be something that's useful for when you're embedding them on a website, where you can control what the output or the visualization looks like. And you've probably noticed they changed the user interface just a tad. It throws me every time I get into it, and I have to take a moment and go, okay, where's the icon for the thing I want to see? But it's not unappealing. So we do try to do So just as a summary on the updates, what we do is we never do a .0 release. We never trust. We've been burnt on those before. So 2019.3 did come out. When it did, we wait for at least 2019.3.1, which actually I think is out now. So we've put it on our upgrade server. We evaluate it first, then we send out the invite to all active publishers. So when you put people in your publisher group and they log in, they get that email, whether they have Tableau Desktop or not. So that's who we send those communications to. It's based on, have you ever logged into the Tableau server, and are you a publisher? And so I think I tried to grab everybody from the production and the test server, just in case they're only on one and not both. And we invite you to take a look at your visualizations. I always encourage you to do that. We have had problems with some version upgrades, especially if you have a densely packed visualization, that the formatting might change just a little bit, just enough to screw up its appearance. So I don't want you to be surprised when we upgrade the servers that you get impacted by that. We always upgrade the production and test servers at the same time. We ran into that problem a few years ago where we had upgraded the test server, and then it was like 2 weeks later we were going to do the production server, and we were having one of those visualization mismatch problems, and people were trying to test it and then publish it, and it just turned into a mess. So that's why we do the upgrade server now, so that you can try out your stuff on the upgrade server. Test and prod always go at the same time. Remember, test is available for you to try stuff out before you put it into the world. Any questions on our upgrades? I would guess we may be looking at 2019.3 later this fall. I haven't had a chance to talk to Jesh about it. And hopefully the online people can hear me okay. I walked away from the, where is the mic?
It's on my computer.
Okay.
You're good. Just don't go.
Trevor, if somebody says they can't hear me, please let me know. All right. No questions on upgrades? Great. Wrong button. There. All right. I have been getting some questions about licensing. So let me do a quick review of history so you understand how we got to where we are. Back in 2014, it was actually a grassroots movement by folks like yourself that approached the BI Priority Committee and asked us to consider purchasing an enterprise-level Tableau server license. We had a small 50-name user license, and honestly, it was only good for experimenting with. It wasn't good enough, large enough to use. So a proposal was submitted to the IT Priority Committee, and they agreed to fund the purchase of the Tableau server license. Just so you know, with our trade-in, it was still over $200,000. That's why none of you have your own Tableau server license. ITPC will not pay for annual maintenance, and so we had to work that agreement out too. Initially, only the Urbana campus and the system offices were committed to definitely using it for the first year or two. So we divided the cost of the annual maintenance between us. Later, as the Chicago campus began using it more, then they started paying their share as well. So in the system offices, AITS pays their part as part of, and I calculated annually based on how much you guys are using it. So Urbana still uses it the most, so they pay the largest share. Then the system offices and the Chicago campus are near the same level. And so we've been split, and Springfield isn't using it much yet, not enough to make a measure. We'd end up charging them $50 or something for their share. So anyway, at Urbana, the provost office pays your share of the maintenance for you. In Chicago, it is passed on to the college level to pay their shares. So they take the Chicago share and then they divide it by the number of colleges. So that's why, and up there, I think it ends up costing about $1,000 a year. Now, our license is for an 8 CPU license. So our server has 8 CPU cores and unlimited users. So yes, we have the whole Urbana AD group in there now. So we have something like 28,000 users or something on the server today. The license that was purchased, the server license, does not include desktop licenses. Most of the people in the room, I'm sure, are aware of that. You had to go buy your own. So let's talk about the desktop license. When we first got Tableau, they only sold it as a perpetual or permanent license. The list price, I think, was $2,000. With higher ed discount, that drops it to $1,500. That includes the first year's annual maintenance. Starting in year 2, you have to pay $300 a year for maintenance and support. Please pay it so that you can stay on the same versions as the server. Otherwise, you are stuck at the version that was the last one you paid for. Now, since then, Tableau had, for a brief time, they had both kinds. They had perpetual licenses and subscription licenses. If you go to the Tableau website today, you will only find subscription licensing. However, we are a legacy because we started before as an organization, University of Illinois System. We are still entitled to purchase perpetual licenses, but you have to write our account rep and ask for it. Now, if you do the math, the break even ends up being after 4 years. After 4 years, perpetual licenses will cost you less over the long term. Subscriptions will get you less upfront cost, but there's a catch. And I'll cover that in a moment. One more thing, students can ask Tableau for a free license for a year, and it's renewable as long as they are a student. So it's quick. I actually teach a class and I make my students do it, and I think they get their license key within an hour. There's no restrictions. It's not limited to classroom use. You can hire a student, they can get a Tableau license, and they can develop Tableau visualizations for you. But when they leave, the license goes with them. It belongs to them, not to the department. So keep that in mind. All right. Why would I get a perpetual versus a subscription? Well, I gave the cost advantage. After 4 years, perpetual ends up being cheaper. And that's back to, which I think I had it on the last screen, didn't I? What the cost was? Yeah, so $300 a year annual maintenance on a perpetual license versus $640 a year of subscription. They give it as a per user per month rate, but they bill you annually. All right, what's the advantages? Perpetual license technically only includes Tableau Desktop. You may have seen Tableau Prep. How many of you have noticed Tableau Prep? How many of you have tried the Tableau Prep? All right. Did you just use the trial key or did you get a key to?
I used it every day.
All right. So if you have a perpetual license, Tableau has granted us the right to use Tableau Prep through 2020, which means next year when we do our annual maintenance renewals, we have to make a choice. If we want to continue to use Tableau Prep, you have to convert to a subscription license. That's where they're getting us. They're trying to push us off perpetual and into subscriptions. So if you think Prep is useful, do it. If you're not using it, put it off for a while, but you won't be able to use Prep after 2020. I have access to a key that will, so if you're only getting a trial key for your Prep, let me know. I don't know if you guys can find the key, but if you're having trouble finding the key to try Tableau Prep, ask me, send me an email, and I'll get you what the key is so that you can use it.
Have they shared this information? Or through 2020?
Not well, no.
I was gonna say, I don't see
No, they've done a really poor job with that. And in fact, when they first explained it to me, they did a really poor job of explaining it to me. But we've had the account rep, which is Steve Cohen, if you haven't heard the name. Steve came to our office late spring, and we had yet another chat about this. And yes, I defended us and said I thought this was a crappy solution. Steve and I had a great relationship. Actually, we didn't get along. But he did share something, that Tableau is in order to get folks like us to switch, the company has been willing to negotiate a cap on the subscription rates that matches our annual maintenance for 2 or 3 years. Kick the can down the road a little further. Let us go to subscription for $300 a year instead of $640 a year. So I'm going to try, DeMuthu and I are planning on meeting with them in the next few months, and we're going to try to negotiate something for the whole University of Illinois system so that we can all take advantage of that, having the volume and stuff. And I'm also going to try for as many years as I can get. No, I'm going for 10. And I came up with 10 because that's how long the state will let a contract run. Now, I think they may laugh at me, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
Move to 7.
That's right. They are also pushing us to move to subscription license for the servers.
Of course they are.
So we are still trying to figure out what the pros and cons of that are. I don't know what my next, I need to check my next screen. All right, let's talk about prep a little. No, I think prep is coming up. All right. So if you want to purchase a license, and cursor must be sitting in the wrong spot. If you want to purchase a license, send an email to Steve. Tell him what it is you want, how many you want. Be clear. If you want a perpetual license, make sure you use those words. Tara, will you be sharing these slides with everybody?
I was just about ready to, I didn't want to interrupt because I see people taking pictures or writing. I will be, this is going to be recorded, okay? I put out a recording after, so you'll hear all the details that all of our speakers had said. The slides will be given out. I'll also put in any additional information or links that people have talked about that they'll provide for me, those types of things. So all of this will be available to you so you don't have to worry about remembering all the details.
All right. Tell them what you want, tell me how many you want, they'll send a quote, pay for it, you got your Tableau license. Annual renewal, that is your responsibility to remember to renew. They should send you an email. If you look in your Tableau desktop, if you go to About and I think Keys or something about license keys, it will tell you how far your maintenance is extended out. Now,
You get warnings.
you get all kinds of warnings, you bet you do. If you're on a perpetual license, it makes it sound like the product's going to stop working. Truth is, it won't stop working. You have a perpetual license. There's a refresh, so after you pay your bill, you should be able to refresh and it should update that date for you. You don't have to inactivate and reactivate. You should be able to hit the refresh button and it pick up your new maintenance date. Depending on when you purchased it, it may be at different dates throughout the year. If you are one of those that purchased when Tableau Desktop was listed in the web store, which was only the first year, those were purchased in December. So the bills come in due. The web store pays it for all those licenses, and then you have to pay the web store. Let's see what else. You have to renew that directly with Tableau. We do not get involved. If you forget to renew it, it's still on you to go back and get it renewed. Sorry, we're big kids. All right, any questions about renewals and purchases? What if you purchased a subscription license and wish you now had a perpetual license? Well, you probably could drop, not renew the subscription and try to go purchase a perpetual, but then you're going to get caught in that bind about do you want to use prep? So my recommendation is just stick with the perpetual. In the long run, you'll probably be better off because it appears that they're going to be doing more things with that, where more things are going to be included with the subscription that are not included with the perpetual.
You said stick with the
Yeah.
Stick with.
I'm sorry, stick with subscription. You're already on subscription, stay there. You're on perpetual. We'll try to get you more information at a future meeting about what we've been successful in negotiating.
You know what your user base here is in terms of the number of licenses?
Once in a while, they will cooperate and send us a list of everybody. And they get me sometimes. So if one of you calls up and say, hey, I'm interested in Tableau server, they will not tell you we have one. They will try to sell you one of those $200,000 plus systems. Yes?
Michael, if you don't have either, which would you tell the person to do? If you're going to be here 7 to 10.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, the question was, if you've not yet purchased, which one would you get? Would you get a perpetual or a subscription? Do you know what prep is? All right, I'm going to talk. I think you need to know what prep offers for you to answer that question. If you have no interest in prep, I'd go with the perpetual license. And now remember, it's going to take 4 years for it to balance. So for the first 3 years, you actually paid more money because you had to pay more in year 1. If you're having problems getting, convincing your department to pay $1,500 a license, find out if they'll pay the $640 a license. That's another factor.
Can you explain what that is?
Yes. I think that's what one of my upcoming slides is. And if it's not, we're just going to make it up on the fly.
Here's a question about licensing. It says, in a class or lab environment, which license would be best?
They do offer an academic license, but it's got restrictions with it. So if you're setting it up in a lab, I don't have a good answer for that. I think we'd have to talk to Tableau and figure it out. A lab might make sense to get an academic license, but you're going to have to prove to them that it's only used for classroom. That is one of the restrictions of the academic license.
But as an academic, you can make a request that you want to use it for teaching or something like that, and you get a free license.
Can you, as an instructor? Okay.
Yeah, I definitely want to add some I was a student of law and we got a generic fee, that's license product fees, and like that will be distributed among all of us, like the students and our professor as well.
All use the same key?
Yes, the same key.
Ooh.
They may not take that well. Just share. Just share. So in my class, what I do is I tell all the students to go out and get their own license. Now, it's also possible, as you know, technology services, and I don't know if ACCC does this or not, but technology services generates AD groups based on class rosters, and they refresh those every day. So we've got about 3 classes out there, I think, that have asked for projects on the Tableau server, and we put the class roster AD group imported into Tableau server and assigned it to that project. Now students can publish to that project with their student license, and that way you've got the server. If you want to go through that experience, and you've got they've got the individual one that they can work on. So somewhere where there was a question that all that started by, did I answer the question I was supposed to?
Follow-up.
Sure.
So if the students can get on the web version of the server, they don't even have to install.
Well, you'd have to publish the data source.
Someone has to publish it. But once it's published, the students can get out.
That would be an option. I go ahead and still have them do the desktop. Well, part of the nature of my class is I want them using the data source directly and learning how to merge things and so forth. My class is in the School of Information Sciences. Data warehousing and business intelligence. It's one of the 590s. Yes, let me move to prep. Prep. So Prep Builder is the desktop tool. You can use Prep. It's kind of an ETL tool. So it lets you take data and you can manipulate that data. As you know, from using Tableau, you got to manipulate the data to make it useful. Usually, you've got to join some things in. You may have dirty data that you need to clean up. Prep can do these things. So here's some examples of some. I've experimented with Prep a little. I'd like you to chime in with some things you've been able to do. But for example, you got city names, and it's been free texted in. A lot of people misspell city names, but Prep is pretty good at figuring out how to correct for spelling. So San Francisco that they misspelled, it will correct for that and put the right value in for you if you wanted to. It's a choice. What if you've got a field where it's a list of things inside the field? So you've got, I don't know what you would say. So in one field, it might be instructors. And so if a class has got one instructor, it's got one name in there. If it's got multiple instructors, then maybe there's a comma or a semicolon between each one. So you got multiple values in a single field. You can split them. I think you can also merge them back together. So you can do all this kinds of manipulation with it, and in the end, generate either a CSV file or a Tableau extract file. So you build this workflow where it builds on, builds on, builds on, and then in the end, you get your clean, curated, well-designed data set that Tableau can now use. So that's the beauty of Prep. Runs on your desktop. That's what that whole subscription includes, and our perpetual license lets us have access to through 2020. There's also recently an add-on for Prep that we can put on the server. And then you can upload your workflows, attach it to a schedule, and as long as the server can connect to your data source, it will run and refresh on a schedule based on what you've chosen, daily, weekly, whatever. So this would be an automated, so you don't have to have it on your desktop and go manually run it every day. We can put it on the server. Of course, this costs money. This is only available through subscription, and it would double our annual cost of the Tableau server. We're paying about $45,000 a year now. That's the whole system. This is about $40,000 to $45,000 per year.
So it's server level.
At the server level. So when we have enough critical mass that people want this, we'll pay for it, and all of us get to help pay for it. Because there's no divvying that up. So whenever we do that, we're just going to pass the costs on, just like we do the annual maintenance. So in Chicago, your colleges, until you get more colleges using it, your annual fee is probably going to go to $2,000 a year if we do this. We are not committed to doing this yet. We don't think there's enough critical mass. I'd say there's maybe 5 to 10% of you that would take advantage of this today. So it's not quite worth it yet. But we need to keep looking at this and figure out, and when we negotiate with them, we're going to try to negotiate as good a price as we can. So if we try to throw out there, hey, if we'll convert all our desktops to subscriptions, if you put a cap, we'll convert our server to subscription, and we'll get this for a bundled price of, something less than they're already talking. So we'll try. So that's what Prep is. And that's the end of my slides. Yes?
I just want to make sure the time frame, and I think you and I had several emails about this licensing issue, and we decided to do this university extension. We have very lots of data for the federal reporting. So we decided to go with subscription-based license this year, and you said campus may have subscription-based license in 2020.
Well, it would still be up to each department to buy their own subscriptions for desktop.
Okay, then
All I'm trying to do is get the price lower if we can.
okay, so you're trying to negotiate the price.
Yeah,
The
I'm trying to get a lower price for
for
it.
subscription-based license for the whole country.
We've tried volume purchasing on Tableau desktop with them before, and they were like, okay, well, if you can commit to 250 licenses, then we can give you a volume discount of, an extra 5% or something. It was like ridiculous. We maybe today, after 5 years, have 250 licenses purchased across the whole university system. So that would have been an awfully expensive acquisition in 2014.
So do you have a rough time frame when in 2020, like
Our goal is to have something in place prior to FY20.
okay.
So that as you plan your FY20 purchases, so that means we put it through in the spring probably. We want it to be available for you in July.
And I just realized that we work with different person at Tableau to get our license purchased, not the Stephen you mentioned in the slide.
Yeah, I think if you go, as long as you make sure you tell them higher ed discount so that you get the because I think the list price of subscription is $800 and something.
Subscription price, you mean?
Yeah, if you pull it up on their website, it should tell you what. About 900.
Either 70 or 75 a month.
Yeah, we get a 25% discount. All higher education gets a 25% discount. Yeah, you got to tell them you're higher ed. Hopefully, they would recognize it from your email address, but they're salespeople trying to make as much money as they can, and they may ignore that. If you weren't aware, Tableau has been purchased by Salesforce. Now they say they intend to operate Tableau as a company as it has always been. And I think there might have been some legal challenge to it recently, so they're going slow on the merger/acquisition.
They still use Tableau as the company name.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
So if you are curious about how much you paid for Tableau subscription-based license, you paid $630 for license.
Okay, so you're getting a higher ed price.
Okay.
And you're entitled to use prep because you
Yes.
bought the subscription. Did I answer your licensing questions?
Yes.
Did I give you more information you care to hear? That's my nature. All right. Tara, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It is 10:30, so we used up all the time, which is fantastic. So that means that we had a lot of really great discussions. Communication, like I mentioned before, I will be sending out. Please, I will be reaching out again in the future for speakers or presentations for people to present. Have anyone, even if you don't think that what you have to say is important, it is important. So just try it sometime, and then I know you guys will love it. Okay? Thank you so much. Have a great day.